Welcome, everyone, to the L7C podcast, Cleveland Cavaliers edition. Today, we are finally giving you the podcast we hinted on at the end of the season, just talking about the 2021-2022 Cleveland Cavaliers and giving a little recap of how they were, how they exceeded expectations, and now with a big trade that has happened these past couple of weeks, talk a little bit about what we're going to expect from them this upcoming NBA season. We have the NBA expert with us, Mr. Evan Debo. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, Martin. It's exciting. Been an exciting last few weeks here in Cleveland Cavaliers fandom and for the franchise. And again, that's on the heels of all the success they've had in the last year as they've kind of made that ascension. So excited to talk about all things Cavs and where they've been and where they're going. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. We're here recording on a Sunday, the first Sunday of another sport, the NFL's opening Sunday, and here to finally talk about the Cavs because once we really get into it, think about how successful this team truly was this basketball year. And now we have expectations going into this year. So it's really exciting to be a Ohio sports fan.
It is. Depending on where you wanted to start, I thought, back to 2022. So obviously the Cavs made it to two play-in games, have two cracks at making the Eastern Conference playoffs. So year before they had 22 wins and up to 44 this past year, and obviously just debilitating injuries down the stretch they endured. Finished with 44-38, which was ninth best in the East when it was all said and done. Even though the Hawks had a worse record, they beat us in the second of those playing games. Cavs were 3-7 in their last 10, so really, really fell. I mean, they were at one point they were at fifth, like right after the All-Star break or leading into the All-Star break, they were first. So just tons of injuries. Jared Allen down the stretch, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland missed a decent amount of time with some back issues, and they really struggled to have some additional ball handlers, creators. That dates back to when Ricky Rubio tore his ACL, picked up Rajon Rondo to try to come in for a spell and assist a little bit too. So those were the growing pains that really hurt what was a very successful season. Again, the season was a success based on where they've been since LeBron and Kyrie's collective departures. But again, 44 wins is nothing to sneeze at. JB Bickerstaff's team was phenomenal. I think back to, if we rewind to where we were about a year ago, when the Cavs shipped out Larry Nance, beloved fan favorite, and acquired Lauri Markkanen. And then suddenly, the scuttlebutt heading into camp was, hey, they're going to start 3 7-footers. And you're like, they're going to what now? As the league's moving small, what was your thoughts at that time, Martin? Like, we just seen those headlines, seen discussion on like, hey, we're gonna kind of buck against the curve here. And we're going to go 3 7-footers.
So even before that, because I was leading into the summer, and I just want to highlight some things really, really quick before I answer that.
Oh, yeah.
So going into the 2021-2022 season, this is from NBA.com and DraftKings. DraftKings only had the Cavs win total over or under at 26.5. And their odds to make the playoffs were a negative 8,000 for no and a plus 2,000 for yes. And then NBA.com had the Cavs predicted finish for the year that we just talked about, winning 44 games, at 30-52. So just those are two highly reputable things. And we smashed those expectations. Now to go back to the thing with the 3 7-footers, I was a little shocked because it's not that type of league anymore. Now, I could have understand that we're going to have these 7-footers each. We're going to throw these bodies at like a Giannis or whatnot, like periodically through a game, but not having all three on the field, on the court at the same time. So that thing, I felt like that was a little bit odd. And I was like, when I was hearing that, I was like, oh, it's going to be another 20, 30-ish win season. But again, like you've already highlighted, they completely smashed those expectations. I had to look back at our episodes on the L7C podcast, and we were talking right before Christmas how the Cavs were balling and right into the All-Star break and stuff, how they were the number one seed at the East, like you said at one point. And obviously injuries derailed us, like you said. But man, I just didn't think they were going to start 3 7-footers. There was no way. No way.
No, I remember being really frustrated by it because, like, I know that, when you're not a really good team and you're in the lottery, you've got to get creative with some things. You got to get creative with cap space and lineups and, schemes and everything else that I was like, really, again, like we've just had 5-6 sustained years of, Golden State Warriors, small ball, and, teams going that way. Houston Rockets, back to the Harden, CP3, days with PJ Tucker, small ball 5. Like, I remember being really frustrated by it. And I was dumbfounded. I think too, I would be surprised if the Cavs didn't say, hey, I think this is a gamble a year ago, but they needed to try something new. And it paid dividends. It really did, Martin.
When you went into the season, Evan, into this past season, who were you expecting to have improvements, like a breakout year? What was your general expectations? Where did you think the Cavs were going to realistically land before they started actually playing ball?
Well, I was excited to see another year of Colin Sexton and Darius Garland and see how that pairing was going to work out. Again, 2 smaller guards struggle defensively. We saw flashes from Garland in the spring of the previous year, obviously highly affected by COVID and stuff. But Sexton was coming back from 24 points a game, and that's nothing to sneeze at. In his, I believe what was his 3rd campaign last year. Again, he just was really, really impressive. But we also had, the lingering Kevin Love piece too, right? He was chucking the balls at people in the year before, and we were wondering where his head's at. Are the Cavs trying to unload him? I was expecting the Cavs to try to, send him to, another team for some salary filler and get a pick back or something if they could from a contender, just because of how his attitude was. But again, obviously as the year progressed, he bought into that 6-man role. He was about as healthy as he's been for us in a long time, reducing his minutes down to 2022. He's out there chucking from deep. Those were some of my thoughts heading into the season. I was hopeful that they could make an ascension record wise and be more competitive. But again, this team was for a large chunk of the year was a top 10 defense. And that's really how they did it. They refer themselves affectionately as, having that dog mentality, and they're doing kind of the defensive player of the game, giant C Cavs chain that they award, the junkyard dog chain they would give to, heroic defensive efforts, throughout the season. Again, it was just awesome to watch as it went through. There was an excitement in the team. This was the first time we sniffed the playoffs without a LeBron James on the roster since, I think, like 97, maybe something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the Elo and Craig Elo days and Larry Nance senior days and those kinds of things. But it was awesome to watch it unfold.
At what point during the season were you like, oh, we actually might have something here with this team and the way they're playing together?
Yeah. Irrational confidence, Evan, definitely came together after the first of the year. And I'm like, hey man, again, as we were starting to climb up the rankings a little bit, it was at the height of the Rubio experience, just how well he and Garland worked, just to have 2 true point guards facilitate offenses. As good as those Cavs teams were, LeBron had to manipulate and direct everything. And, it was a lot of one-on-one hero ball between, him and Kyrie doing ISOs and stuff too, that we didn't see this beautiful. I think of NBA offenses as like, hey, when they're usually at their best with championship teams, it's like an orchestra, right? You have to involve the strings and the bass players and the flutes and trumpets and all those way around. You can make some really good music with just a trumpet and just a flute and just a drummer. But again, we were really humming and making really good on-court basketball music for 48 minutes between Darius Garland and Ricky Rubio facilitating the offense. Nobody had to, any given night, it could have been, somebody putting in Jared Allen, it could have been Evan Mobley. And as we saw moving forward, it was really Darius Garland just going to town. I think in his last 20, 30 games that he played, he was averaging like 25 and 10, especially after Rubio went down. So I think that's about the time, I think, was right, almost leading up right until the debilitating Rubio injury.
Did you think they were going to hold on after, like you said, all those injuries after the All-Star break?
I definitely have my doubts. Again, it was tough because we really needed a second creator. By that time, we didn't have Colin Sexton, who we'd lost for the season after only like 8 or 9 games. But we were still playing very well, getting a lot of effort from supporting players. Dean Wade, he would go down with a season-ending injury too in late April. Again, it was just amazing to see unfold.
So then you talked about the 2 playing games. One was against Brooklyn and one was against Atlanta. Both were very still competitive games. I do believe fully healthy, we could have won one, if not both of those games, just on the way those games were going. How did you feel watching those 2 playing games? Did you think that we had a chance? Did you not think we had a chance?
So the Brooklyn game, I watched from my couch. The Atlanta game, I was at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse to see that unfold. So with the Brooklyn game, they came out and hit us pretty hard. It was competitive, but it was a too little, too late kind of effort as when we were closing the gap, towards the very end of the ball game. We just struggled. We didn't have Jared Allen. They were getting wherever they wanted in the paint, and even a half casual effort from a Kyrie and Kevin Durant was enough to do it. For the Atlanta game, that was, we had a 10-point lead at half, and I was thinking to myself, I remember standing up out at concession stand before the second half, and I'm like, we're going to do this. We played a great half of basketball. Jared Allen came back and played that game, but obviously incredibly hampered, really struggling with that hand injury he had sustained. So he wasn't himself, but he was effective. He was a deterrent for Trae Young getting to the paint and stuff. And then again, just third quarter, they came out and really took it to us, particularly Trae. Darius struggles on the defensive end. We didn't have some of the bodies rotating. Rondo was playing a decent amount of minutes, and he's not the Rondo of old by any means. Shelved himself trying to chase around Young on screens and stuff. Again, John Collins was effective. I had higher hopes and still thought somehow we'd find a way to pull it out. But that was definitely the more competitive of the 2 games, in terms of opportunities to make the first round.
And then, unfortunately, we go down. We don't get into the official playoffs. So then, with that being said, we go into the summer before the draft. What would you, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being worst season ever, 10 being one of the greatest seasons you've seen in Cleveland Cavalier history, how would you rate this season?
So I've been following Cavs basketball since LeBron was drafted, essentially. So looking at 02, 03. We had some down years in there. I've seen the highest of the highs. I've seen the lowest of the lows when he went to Miami, when he went to the Lakers, and we had to do, 3-4 years of rebuilds. I'd definitely give it maybe a 6.8, maybe a 7. I think in terms of success, so many different things, optimism, you name it. And that says a lot about just, where they were able to go with it too. So, and heading into the draft as well. So one key thing heading in there. So while we didn't make the playoffs, what that did was, so we made a trade at the end of the regular season to acquire Karis LeVert. So now we ended up getting another old Brooklyn Nets piece, that had been moved around from the original James Harden,
which was a great
Houston.
pickup.
So we get him and Jared Allen. great pickup, Pickerington products in his own. So back in the Buckeye States, I think Karras, we've seen Karras drop 50 before, have some really high scoring games. It wasn't quite as, oh my gosh, this is the missing piece for second creator, everything else we need. He was helpful, but I mean, we struggled to incorporate him. And again, just think about how tough that is on the fly to do, with however long that was, 10 weeks to go in the regular season. You've got so many lineups for running out, all kinds of folks out there, specifically with the bigs when we started, getting hampered by injury even again. But so as a result of that, if we had made the playoffs, we would have given Indiana our first round pick. If we did not make the playoffs, which was worst case scenario for us, wanting to move ahead and, break that ceiling without LeBron for the first time in a long time, that pick would convey to next year, and there's different protections and stuff on it. So it was lottery protected this year. So we not only got Karras, but then we got a lottery pick, number 14 in the drafting and the draft night, and a lot of opportunity there. Cavs would ultimately take Ochai Agbaji, phenomenal guard from Kansas. And again, I mean, that was a great pickup to have as a consolation prize. What did you think about heading into draft night, and what was your grade for the season?
So I'll do the draft night first. I know we were having conversations, you and I, because I thought they were going to go, he's not from here, but played here. I thought they were going to go Malachi. I really did. Just because of what he provided, his upside, the Ohio State connection. I thought they were going to pick him. Season rating wise, well, we didn't win a championship, so it can't be a 10. But I think I'm around like the 6.8 to 7 just because of them exceeding everyone's expectations. Like everyone thought this was going to be a bottom feeder of the league, and we were a tough out for a lot of people, and we made the play-in tournament. And if we don't get hurt, I know that's the thing in sports, but if we don't get hurt, I think we're at least a 4th to 5th seed in the East in the playoffs.
I think so too. I wasn't as high on the Ochai Agbaji, pick at the time. He had a really good summer league for us, which kind of turned my head a little bit on it. Another name in contention that we weren't expecting to quite fall down to us was AJ Griffin from Duke. There were some questions about health, but, he fits that glaring that we still have to this day on Sunday, September 11th, glaring small forward hole that we have. But he would the Cavs would end up passing on him and going with Ochai. And then we progressed through the offseason, a number of different things. Kevin Durant requested a trade, then changed his mind. All these different pieces. And then the Utah Jazz start blowing things up in the offseason, Martin. So we started this conversation with, kind of some bucking of the trends, right, in terms of scheme and lineups. And, they got a second 7-footer like the Cavs in Minneapolis as the Timberwolves acquired Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz, and what started to become a fire sale to go out there. So now you've got a second team with, some considerable size out there to add to Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell, Jared Vanderbilt, you name it out there. And they got a lot of picks back. And then we started to hear some rumors about Cavs in discussions or kicking the tires, at least, with Utah on the remaining superstar, one Donavan Mitchell. I got to admit, when I was reading some of those things, listening to podcasts talking about that, I didn't pay it much effort, didn't pay it much time. Obviously, we've had this Colin Sexton was just holding out, wanting $20 million a year. His contract was up. Thought he was just going to end up taking the qualifying offer and waiting. He was waiting for, essentially Mitchell to move or Durant to move, because every other team had no cap space to sign him for what he wanted. And the Cavs weren't going to pay him, and said, hey, man, sorry, this is the market. If things work out well next year, we can go somewhere else. But and then randomly, the Woj bomb, Martin. Cavs acquire all-star guard Donovan Mitchell from the Utah Jazz in exchange for first-round picks in 25, 27, 29, pick swaps in 26 and 28, along with Ochai Agbaji, we shouldn't have really had him, a consolation prize for missing the playoffs, number 14 pick in the draft. Colin Sexton via sign and trade, who ended up getting paid a little bit in this. And then obviously we lose who we were starting at small forward, and Lowry Markkanen. Sexton got 4 years, 72 out of that. Big haul, a lot of picks. I mean, we're not going to have a first round pick for another 8 years, Martin. 8 years. Cashed in the farm. What was your reaction to that? So we pair him with Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. We've got 3 All-Stars. Yeah, we've got 3 All-Stars on the team. One of them is not even Evan Mobley yet, although he's projected to be. But what were your thoughts? I mean, that was huge. That's what everybody was waiting on. We didn't know what Utah was going to end up doing. Obviously, they held out and got the farm from the Cavs. I still kind of struggle with the haul, but sometimes when you're a small market team, you gotta swing big or go home. So what were your thoughts?
My first thoughts were, I was shocked because I didn't even think we were in the race for Donovan Mitchell. All the reports were it was to New York. It was going to happen to New York. It was just a matter of when that it was going to happen in New York. But then you see some things with New York, like obviously they gave RJ Barrett that huge new contract. They overpaid for Jalen Brunson, which we said on this podcast that the way Jalen was playing, he wasn't going to take a hometown discount from Dallas. He was going to go somewhere else and get a whole bunch of money, in which he did for the Knicks. So you paid those two, and they would have been trade assets to get Donovan. So then we're just sitting here, and I had to look through our stuff. It was at the beginning of September. It was like September 1st or 2nd, where you shared the thing like Donovan Mitchell's a Cavalier. First, honestly, I had to check if it was from a verified account because it was just so unexpected.
Yeah.
And then when I see Shams, Woj, Haynes, all of them, I'm like, what the heck just happened? Like, what undermining thing did the Cavs do that we got them? And then I saw the haul. I was like, well, someone had to go. So my first thing was checking, okay, is Jared Allen there? Cool. Garland, cool. Evan, cool. I was like, so who? I was like, that means Collins gone, and then Markkanen, and then our guy who barely hasn't even played a full season with us, the guy we just drafted from Kansas, and all those picks. I'm like, this is a lot, but this is exciting. Like after I got past the shock, I was like, oh my gosh, we just got a proven 24 to 26 point per game scorer with Donovan, paired him up with Garland, Jarrett, Evan. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like we're going to have expectations going into this year. And I agree. I don't like giving up all those picks, but in theory, if we're as good as we think we're going to be these next couple of years, those would be lower end picks.
Yeah, they will. So I think that's a valid point. So, we hear about potentially 5 picks being moved. So those off years, and again, if you're unfamiliar with, you can't trade successive years. It's called the Stepien rule. NBA franchises, it's basically a way for the league to protect franchises from themselves. And instead of giving, hey, here's the next 3 years in a row of picks, it has to be every other year. But those pick swaps in between in 26 and 28, I mean, it sounds good on paper. If I'm Utah, I'm going back to ownership and say, hey, I got pick swaps in these years too, in addition to changeable picks from the Cavs. I mean, let's be honest. Like, who's going to have a worse record in 2026 and 2028, barring debilitating injuries from like 2 or 3 of our stars? Utah's going to have a worse record. So that might be what's on paper, that they can swap us if we finish with a worse record than them. But there's no way. I mean, there's absolutely no way unless it's debilitating injury. Again, Utah has bottom. They're going to bottom out. They're going to get in the Wembanyama sweepstakes in the draft up here, along with the Spurs, who traded DeJounte Murray earlier this summer. So that's one big piece from this trade. Another big piece from this trade too is, and it's kind of caught some of the reporters by surprise, like dating back 3 months. So, Martin, you're familiar with the collective bargaining agreement on the rookie extension piece, are you?
Yes.
Okay. So for listeners, essentially you can have one rookie player, or you can have one player from a draft class on a rookie max extension, more or less. So when the Brooklyn Nets were entertaining, like, hey, what could we get for Kevin Durant? I mean, they were limited if they were truly listening for offers, because they had Ben Simmons on the roster who fit that description of being on a rookie max extension. And, depending on who else they wanted to trade with, that was the case. Bam Adebayo, they couldn't have acquired him because you can't have two on the same team. So I say that all to say that the Cavs acquired Donovan Mitchell, who fits that extension designation. And then now you've got Evan Mobley coming up, and you can't offer him that. You can offer him 4 years as opposed to 5 years. We will be yet to see, or it'll be yet to be seen, down the road when his contract is up. He's only in year 2 of his rookie deal. If that truly matters to Evan, or, again, if we can get him to take a short term, then give him a long term to work around it, because your second contract can't be the full max extension. So like the Cavs now have handcuffed themselves, can't offer that on the back end. So that's another big, interesting piece from that trade. So we'll have to watch that down the stretch. But yeah, again, we've got Donovan Mitchell on the roster, Martin. I mean, proven all-star commodity. I think an all-time, obviously short sample size of like 3 postseasons, but 8th all-time in playoff scoring history at like 28 a game. Mm-hmm. When the chips are down and things matter most, who can get to 16 wins first? I'll take that on my team.
No, yeah, and with Garland too, again, you get a proven scorer, another shot maker, shot creator. Like, you get a whole bunch of stuff with Donovan, and then with Jared. I guess too, with like just looking at the starting lineup, which is funny hearing ESPN talk about the Cavs. Kendrick Perkins, take it for what it's worth, stated that the Cavs now have, if not the best starting 5 in the league. What do you think of someone of that stature on ESPN saying that about the Cavaliers?
Well, I think we only had like maybe 1 game that was flexed in, or 2 games flexed in primetime on ESPN, ABC, or TNT last year, Martin. Yep. So first off, I'm just glad they're talking about us again. I mean, that's despite how good of a season we had, So I'm glad. I mean, obviously it sounds all good on paper. I mean, the Brooklyn Nets sound good on paper, but we got to go out there and play basketball games. There's going to be injuries. Other teams are going to have injuries to truly see that. But I mean, again, the Cavs have, in my opinion, the best defensive front court in the NBA. Again, I think Boston and Robert Williams and Al Horford are absolutely in contention for that title too. The Bucks with Lopez and Giannis, they're in that discussion as well. But by all accounts, I mean, the pieces are there to validate that conversation, but we got to play games. And yes, ESPN, it's about hot takes. It's about getting clicks, and can you believe Kendrick said that and everything else? But I mean, again, there's a lot to be seen. They still have that glow. The rest of the lineup, they still have Isaac Okoro slated to be our undersized small forward. We're very limited now on what you can do, at least this year. But heading into next year, I just want to pull up real quick what the cap situation looks like. So post Donovan Mitchell trade, I believe we still have 1 roster spot open, and we are just barely under the salary cap. So that's at $147 million is our payroll for this year. In 23-24, Kevin Love comes off the books. I would love to re-sign him, but obviously not for $29 million a year from his max we signed him to in like 2014. Karis LeVert comes off the books. He's up for an extension too. It'll be interesting to see, do the Cavs extend him? Coming off the bench, what have you, or is he, potential person for that small forward spot? And then some small contracts, Dylan Windler, Dean Wade. We signed Raul Neto and Robin Lopez to minimum deals as well too. So that creates from this year to next year, Martin, that creates about, 29 million in cap space to go out and find. And if you were curious, because I know you are, let me read you some names names from at least the 2023 NBA free agency list. Obviously, there's some here on the Cavs in terms of small forwards, at least. So Russell Westbrook, obviously, we're not touching that. Chris Middleton, free agent. Andrew Wiggins, free agent. Harrison Barnes, very realistic, stable, free agent. Bojan Bogdanovic. If I'm Utah, I'm trying to get off his deal and get something for him before he is on it, because he's on an expiring heading in this season. But Karis LeVert, obviously, Gary Trent Jr. has proven. I mean, we Cavs really need shooting. Donovan Mitchell's not a great 3-point shooter, per se. He's capable, but Terrence Ross, Josh Hart, Kelly Oubre. There's some names in there, and if you got $29 million in cap space, you've got some room to do some stuff. So that's down the road. The here and now is Donovan Mitchell's a Cavalier, and I mean it's exciting times. Again, that's given up a lot of picks. We do not have control of a first-round pick until 2030. That scares me. Donovan Mitchell is undersized for his position, also a defensive liability too. Who knows how much of that was, hey, he really hated playing with Rudy Gobert, and maybe he wasn't as bought in as he should have been. Can he take another leap with having, 2 security blankets back there and our 2 7-footers? Maybe. But Martin, just incredibly excited for training camp here to start in another couple of weeks and us to start a new season next month already.
Yeah, because next month we're already coming with everyone else in our season previews where we pick who we think is going to make the playoffs, all that stuff. But Evan, you made a great thing about being flexed into games. Currently, right now, before any flexing, and we're on 9 national televised games.
That's a big leap.
And yeah, so 2 games on TNT, December 6th with the Lakers, February 2nd versus Memphis. 3 games on ESPN, the 10th versus New Orleans, the 1st versus Boston, 15th versus Philadelphia. I guess they count these as national. 4 games on NBA TV, the 7th against the Clippers, 26th against Brooklyn, the 10th at March 10th against Miami, and March 21st at Brooklyn. And obviously these can be subject to change. We're playing New Orleans on Martin Luther King matinee on the 16th. So there's it is a huge jump from when we start the regular season on Wednesday, October 19th at Toronto. So we're going to be coming right back previewing the season because it's almost here.
It is. Martin, any thoughts on, so last topical piece on the Cavs, any thoughts on LeVert versus Okoro starting versus bench and why?
I start Okoro for the defensive capabilities of him, because like you said, our 2 backcourt people, they ain't the greatest defenders on planet Earth. Nothing's against them, but I start him for more of the defensive things, and then LeVert gives you that punch offensively off the bench, which I think is a successful NBA team. You need someone who can give you a punch offensively off the bench when your starters are having a bad game, because that is guaranteed to happen. Mm-hmm. And you need someone to spark it up offensively. So that's what I would do.
I would do that too. LeVert in particular is going to be from October through December, maybe even into a little bit of January, is your timeline for, Ricky coming back too, from his ACL tear, and who knows what kind of Ricky you're getting, as well when he comes back. I mean, you're obviously getting the mind and, seeing the floor and everything else, but can his body keep up with that, moving at the pace he does, and, not having played competitive basketball since March. So, that way LeVert comes in. He's your, assisting ball handler, creator, along with Raul Neto. We signed former Washington Wizard, very capable backup point guard running an offense. There's a lot to be seen here. Martin, where do you have this Cavs team ranked? You said if they played everything out in 21, 22, they potentially you're 4 to 6 range, more or less. So looking at the Eastern Conference, by all accounts, it seems like the Brooklyn Nets are going to come back, and who knows if they're going to pout or whatever, but you've got them back in contention. And who knows if Benjamin Simmons is going to dribble a basketball or not. I think that dude's done. I'll believe it when I see it at this point. This is like heading into 3 years of not playing basketball. You've got the Miami Heat, who will be back up there defending Eastern Conference champions, the Boston Celtics. Obviously, again, we're both always really high on Milwaukee and the best player in the league, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Raptors keep making some gains here and there. You've got Philly, picking up PJ Tucker and, all the Twitter buzz about James Harden shedding some pounds and trying to care or whatever they're trying to spit. Chicago's still got capable players. The Hawks have added DeJounte Murray. The Knicks have added Jalen Brunson. Amongst that stack, Martin, like, where realistically do you think the Cavs fall on paper?
So I would have to think exactly where I would put them, and I'll definitely have that when we do the season preview. But win total right now, I think everyone healthy, I think they're at least going to go 50 and 32.
Wow.
So I have to really, I think they're going to go 50 and 32. They won 44 games last year with the whole team being hurt for a stretch.
Tons of injuries.
So if everyone stays healthy, I think that's realistic that they win 6 more games from last year with now a Donovan on the team and another year of experience.
Listen, buddy, let me tell you one more reason why that is not unrealistic for hitting the 50 wins threshold. So essentially, you look at what the Cavs gave up, a bunch of future assets. Ochai Agbaji wasn't on this team last year, and what they acquired. You take out all those things that did not play basketball minutes last year for the Cleveland Cavaliers when they were competitive and everything else. We're writing off Colin Sexton. He played 9 games. You essentially traded Lauri Markkanen for Donovan Mitchell in terms of on-court playing. And despite all those injuries, they had 44 wins. And Donovan Mitchell absolutely is an upgrade over Lauri Markkanen. So I think 50 wins is absolutely, within our means to do. Last year, only 4 teams in the Eastern Conference hit the 50 win piece: Sixers, Bucks, Celtics, Heat, with Raptors at 48 in there too. I really think Miami's going to slide a little bit this year. I still think they're going to be good. I still think we're never going to win in Miami in my lifetime, because that's just always the devil's den, trying to go down there and play for whatever reason for us, even when LeBron was here. But I see us as high potentially as a 3 seed. And that's very high. I mean, that's saying that, hey, the Sixers might have some injuries, Harden, Embiid, yada, yada, yada. But I really see our floor. I think that's the most important part here. I really see our floor being the 6 seed, Martin, which gets you out of the play-in, and we're guaranteed in the playoffs. I think we're competing for home court advantage as one of those 4 teams, as one of those top 4 teams this year. So again, it's all on paper. We got a lot to see. But again, it's incredibly exciting team and exciting time for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Shout out to Kobe Altman, JB Bickerstaff, Mike Gansey, our general manager, for, putting us in this position.
I like that. Ceiling as low as 6. I do like that. That's a good. I mean, yeah, that's really good. So as high as 3, as low as 6. It's a pretty good window. I just have to. I agree. It's just now I gotta sit when we come back.
Oh, yeah. And again, I think there's going to be teams like, don't get me wrong, Brooklyn doesn't want to get in the play-in game again, but I see a lot of, hey, we're here about the postseason. We're not here for the regular season. We're here to get to the dance, and then we'll flip the switch like some of those Cavs teams did. And I really see that being kind of Kevin Durant's mentality moving forward. So with that being said, like, if you're along the lines of that ideology, I think a team like that is, not looking to go 1, 2, or 3 and exert themselves and play on back-to-backs and everything else. So it'll be interesting to see, how the Cavs definitely have a harder schedule than they did last year. The league has made an effort when we're talking about where teams are going to fall to kind of have like a baseball. Did you see that in the schedule release? Kind of like a baseball mentality where you're going to instead of, hey, you're going to play Philly on one night, then fly home and play Philly, you're going to play Philly on a Tuesday and then again on a Thursday or Friday, and you're not going to leave town. So in theory, time changes, travel, jet lag, everything else, that should help road teams compete more competitively, I think, and home teams too for hosting if you got to host the same team back to back. So that'll be interesting to see. I think that we'll see how that goes, and then it all gets thrown out the window next year, right? With this crazy in-season tournament they're trying to throw together that I still don't really care about.
I don't either. There's no
Hey, come play for the chance to have the first pick in the second round.
Yeah, there's no incentive. No incentive.
Not worth it.
Evan, anything else, man, you want to say on the Cavs before we sign out here?
No, I think we've about covered it all. Really excited about, again, the bench depth. We've got to figure out the small forward piece. Maybe we can be on buyout watch if we're that good, in March, April, to have some extra length at the wing position too. But again, I mean, this is your Cavs core. You look up and down all the teams we named, there's in the Eastern Conference, there aren't teams that have this core like this of guys under 26 now, because Donavan just turned 26 on Thursday or Wednesday, I think. There's just not a lot of teams that have this. Like, I know the ESPN does those projected future rankings. We've got to be up towards the top of the list. I mean, in terms of again, where this team can go, how young they are, how they're going to gel together. It's a lot of basketball miles to be logged and played, but I'm excited, Martin, and I know you are too.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited, and I'll be even more excited when we come back in a couple of weeks when we preview the NBA season and when we actually put down where we think the Cavs will land compared to the other teams. And yeah, it's NFL is just starting their Sunday today, and basketball is going to be here in 3 weeks.
And the Cavs all-star / great player is not suspended for 11 games like the other team across the block. So that's always a plus too as we start the season. So
always is. With that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. Make sure you like, rate, comment, subscribe wherever you listen. Like I stated, we are going to be back in about 3 weeks previewing the NBA season, where we think teams are going to land, who we think is going to make the playoffs, early season MVPs. We'll be right here in a couple of weeks, so be on the lookout for that. Again, this is the L7C podcast, signing out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.